Hi everyone, it's me again. I'm here to talk about Act 4. One thing I want to talk about before I start talking about the act is dramatic irony, which I had defined for you a little bit earlier in the play on one of my earlier assignments. And if you remember what dramatic irony is, it's when the audience knows something that the characters do not, or at least that one character does not. And so, one example of this is the fact that we know, the audience knows, that Juliet is already married to Romeo, so she can't marry Paris, right? That would be illegal. Of course, her parents do not know that. So, in all of the scenes where they're talking about her getting married, and all of the scenes, even at the beginning of Act 4, when she is lying basically and telling her father that, she's sorry and she learned not to sin against him and all of that, that we know that's dramatic irony, that we know she's already married to Romeo and she has no intention of marrying Paris, and that in fact at that point the friar and her have come up with a plan for her to drink a potion that makes it seem like she's dead, but really she's just asleep. So that's sort of our first big example of dramatic irony in Act 4. Let's see, what else do I need to say about that? One other thing, situational irony is when something happens that's the opposite of what you would expect to happen. And so I asked you about that for scene 1 or 2 of Act 5. I think in scenes 1 and 2 of Act 5, there's a question on there about that. And so dramatic irony, again, is when the audience knows something the characters don't. And situational irony is when something happens that's the opposite of what you would expect to happen. And so we have an example of both really in the beginning of Act 5. So when you get to those questions, hopefully this will help you with that. All right, so back to Act 4. We have... so right away in Act 4, Juliet, like Romeo, shows a willingness to kill herself, right? He had said, let me kill myself, let me cut myself to repent for, hurting Juliet's feelings, whatever. She's willing to kill herself too. She says if the friar can't come up with a good plan, she'll be willing to die. And so that's why he says, well, if you're willing to die, then maybe we can try this. And so that's what makes him come up with the idea of taking that potion that will make her seem like she's dead. Because that's a scary thing, right? What if he gives her too much, something goes wrong? But if she's willing to die anyway, then she might be desperate enough to try anything. And so that's that situation. And then, let's see. So again, to reiterate, in the beginning of scene 2, when she goes back home and she's talking to her father, she says, she's sorry and she'll get ready to marry Paris, and her father's really excited and happy. But we, of course, know she's lying and that she's going to take the potion. We see her being very nervous about it though, right? She's nervous. She's afraid that she might die. So even though she had wanted to die earlier, now when the sort of faced with the possibility, it makes her a little bit nervous. She's also afraid if she doesn't die that she might wake up before Romeo can get to her in the tomb, right? They're going to stick her in a tomb, which is like a stone building where they keep dead bodies. And so, in some cases you bury bodies underground, in other cases you put them in basically a little stone house. And so they're going to put her in a vault in one of these stone houses. And so she's afraid she'll wake up. Maybe there won't be enough air in there. She'll suffocate before Romeo can come get her. Or she's also really nervous about being shut up inside this vault with people who died hundreds of years ago. Like there's going to be corpses all around her, basically, which is a pretty terrifying thought as well. Who wants to be surrounded by all those dead bodies? And so those are the things that she's most nervous about and afraid of. Now, she drinks the potion, of course, and the next morning, the, lady and Lord Capulet are getting ready for the wedding. And we know, again, there's some more dramatic irony because we know they're going to go in and find her seemingly dead. So they're getting ready and they're preparing for the wedding, but there's not going to be a wedding. And so we already know that. We also, some more dramatic irony, when they do find her, they think she's really dead. And we, of course, know she's not. She's just taken this potion, or probably not. Again, as she said, there's always the chance that maybe something could go wrong. But we know that the intention was not for her to actually kill herself, that she, was planning on waking up later, right? And in the tomb when Romeo comes to get her. Let me make sure I didn't skip anything. We got that, we got that, we got that. Oh, one other thing about answering questions. When I ask you to summarize something, I don't want you to write the exact words. A lot of people are still taking like exact phrases. Summarize means to put it in your own words, to take what has happened in the scene or in the lines or whatever and convey what really, like, basically put it into easily understandable words that you have come up with that shows me that you understood what was being said, that makes it clear. Some of you are just dropping phrases from those speeches onto the page, which doesn't show me anything except that you can copy phrases. So make sure when I ask you to summarize, you do put that in your own words and you do convey what's happening, because that's how I know if you've understood or not. Okay, now a few things about figures of speech. And a lot of people were confused about that question where earlier in the play, Juliet had said that she would marry death, basically, if she couldn't marry Romeo. And I asked you to find a connection to that. And so some people had trouble with that. So I have just here, I have some things written. I don't know if you can see that, but if I lift that like this. So it says, death lies on her like an untimely frost upon the sweetest flower of all the fields. And so here we have death being like a frost, and we have Juliet being like the flower. Okay, so death is the frost, that's the simile, and Juliet is the flower, that's the metaphor. Going on further, I had asked you where, again, Lord Capulet echoes that same idea that Juliet's married to Death. He says, Death is my son-in-law. That shows the connection there. And then finally, there was an example of personification I asked you for. Paris calls Death detestable and that he has overthrown Paris. And so obviously Death can't overthrow anyone. He's not a person. So that's the idea there. So hopefully all that is helpful, and I will see you again later.